Yep. Agenda items 1 and 2, apologies for absence and substitutes. We have received apologies for absence from Councillor Phil Shaw, who will be substituted by Councillor Roger Constable, and Councillor Arthur Williams, who will be substituted by James Gooding. Thank you both. Have we got any other apologies? No. Non-members attending, Councillor Joe McPherson. Minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of March 2022 and 31st of March 2022. Are these agreed, members? Thank you. Item 5, to receive declarations of interest. Is there any members? No members indicated. Item 6, land north of London Road, west of Raworth Industrial Estate, Raworth Lane, Rayleigh. And Katie Rogers will present.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can you hear me okay? Is that all right? A bit nearer. Okay. Mr. Chairman, this application relates to 2 parcels of land at a site known as Land North of London Road. The parcels are both west of the Spine Road, so that's the Spine Road running down there, and they're both west of that, and they're both north of the Raworth Brook. The western boundary of both parcels will adjoin strategic open green space in this area here. And the parcels are part of a wider site which is subject to outline planning permission for largely residential development. The principle of residential development on this site has therefore already been accepted. And this application seeks reserved matters approval relating to the layout, scale and appearance of the proposed dwellings and the landscaping and access arrangements. Just zoom out a little bit on that. So in total, 76 dwellings are proposed, and the plan on screen shows how the buildings would be positioned. I'll just zoom into the northern parcel. Is it a bit quiet still? Yeah. I'll move it over there. I think that, does that sound better?
Is that better for you?
I think it's a bit high. Oh, I don't know. I think we'll try, that's better, isn't it?
That's far better, thank you.
Okay, so this is the northern parcel, and you can see that detached properties are proposed in the northern and central parts of this parcel. Dwellings would be positioned facing onto the Spine Road and positioned facing onto the open green space to the west. This relationship of dwellings to the street and open space would mimic that of dwellings approved in other phases of the site, including on the opposite side of the Spine Road in this phase here. In terms of the relationship of dwellings proposed to one another, it's considered that this would be acceptable. A planning condition is, however, recommended which would remove permitted development rights for 2-storey rear extensions to some of the dwellings in this parcel, given the separation distances between them. Where dwellings would occupy corner plots, so like here, and then there's quite a few corners because we've got the access road coming through there. Care has been taken to make sure that the side elevations of these dwellings were also fenestrated to add visual interest in the street scene. All of the dwellings would benefit from an enclosed rear garden and on-site parking provision. There is also a number of unallocated visitor parking spaces. There's one there, they're dotted about, there's one here, and one here in this parcel. And also one there. These are marked with a V on the plan, but obviously it's too small to see that detail. At the southern end of this parcel, I'll just scroll down. So in this position here, a flatted block is proposed. This will be sited opposite a similar flatted block to the northern boundary of the southern parcel. The two would be separated by an area of open green space through here, with a link through to the wider area of open green space to the west. It is considered that the relationship between the proposed flatted blocks and nearby existing dwellings, the closest of which are to the east on the Spine Road, so over here, would be acceptable. Some of the windows in the flatted block would face east, but these would overlook the public realm of the spine road and the front elevations of nearby dwellings, rather than the rear windows, where a greater degree of privacy would be expected. There would be sufficient separation of the flatted blocks to these nearby dwellings to guard against a degree of overshadowing which would be unacceptable. So you've got the full width of the spine road, which includes grass verged and a swale to one side as well. Again, if I just scroll down so you can see the layout in the southern parcel. So again, dwellings in the southern parcel would face onto the spine road, or to the open space, so onto here, or to the open space to the west, or onto the little sort of pocket amenity green positioned here. The two dwellings to the south, so to the southern boundary here, would have side elevations onto the southern boundary, but these would be fenestrated to allow for passive surveillance of what will be another amenity sort of green space provided in the parcel that's adjacent to the south. As well as the pedestrian route through to the open space to the west, between the two parcels, the proposed layout will provide other opportunities for pedestrian routes through. So one to the southern boundary here, obviously along this access road and through here, and there's also footpaths provided through this amenity green space. If I scroll up. So in addition, there'd be an access for pedestrians to enter the open space to the west at this point here. Just zoom out. Four vehicular accesses off the spine road are proposed to serve the development parcels. So one here, one here, one here, and another one here. And three of those, so this one here, so the main sort of T-junction accesses already have reserve matters approval as part of a reserve matters application that included the spine road. So this one here is the additional vehicular crossover, which would just serve the handful of dwellings in this location here. Take you to one of the house type plans. So there are a number of different house types proposed, and this is just one of the larger detached houses, which features small dormer windows to the front roof plane. This house type is very similar to the house types approved in phase 1. Or one of the house types approved in phase 1. And this plan shows the dwelling in red brick, but across the site a mix of red brick, buff brick, alongside some render and weatherboarding is proposed. So this is one of the flatted block elevation plans. Both of the flatted blocks would be 3-storey, and in scale, form and appearance, the two flatted blocks would be similar to the flatted blocks already approved and constructed within phase 1. The flats would feature external balconies and be finished in a mix of weatherboarding and brick. So I'm going to take you to some of the street scenes just to give you a general impression of the types of dwellings that are proposed. These street scenes show the mix of external facing materials proposed and some of the different house types. Only a few semi-detached dwellings are proposed, some of which are shown on the bottom street scene, so the pair here and a pair here. So on the top two street scenes, so this is DD and EE here, you can see the treatment of side elevations that would face the public realm. So it's a bit small, but these are all side elevations, so they're not the main frontage, but they're all fenestrated to add interest. And this is the southern boundary of the southern parcel, and this would face onto some public open space. This is the point of connectivity through to that public open space for pedestrians on this point of the southern boundary here. The boundary treatment here along this southern boundary is a brick wall with brick pillars between which would be some timber boarding, and this is typical, or the main sort of publicly visible boundaries throughout the site would be in kind of robust brick finish It would be the boundaries between the sort of gardens that aren't publicly visible that would be formed of closed boarded fencing. On the bottom street scene, you can see this part of the site is the part that has the greatest change in land levels. This flatted block here is the flatted block in the southern portion of the northern parcel, and it's at a lower point within the site. So landscaping is also a consideration for this Reserve Matters application. You can see from the plan on screen, I might have to zoom in a little bit because of the scale, but the green circles indicate new tree planting within the red line boundary of this application site, and there are a significant number of new trees proposed. You'll also see within the open space and within the sort of Spine Road landscaping to the side, there are also trees proposed there. They're shown in the circles that are white in colour. In addition to new tree planting, there are shrub planting and hedge planting along the boundaries. And the amenity green space, which is in the southern parcel, here would feature trees, hedge planting, but would be largely laid to grass. Officers consider that the 76 dwellings proposed will be laid out in a way which responds positively to the Spine Road and adjacent residential parcels and open space. I'll just go back to the scale, form and appearance of buildings would be in keeping with the context of the site and positive in terms of the effect on visual amenity. The proposed soft landscaping, including a significant amount of tree planting, would also contribute to the overall high standard of design that would be achieved. Officers do recommend that Condition 2 is amended slightly, simply to delete the duplicate plan reference, and that Condition 5 is amended to reference plan number P1641, rather than, as stated, 16241. It's just a typo. In addition, Condition 13 is to reference the approved materials schedule and plan. But subject to these changes, the recommendation, Chairman, is one of approval, subject to the recommended conditions.
Thank you, Katie. We have one public speaker for this item, Mr. Robert Hoy, who's an objector. Would you like to come and sit up here, Mr. Hoy? So, and a microphone will be given to you. You have 5 minutes to speak. And I'll remind you when you've got 1 minute to go.
No worries. Thank you
very much.
Can you hear me okay? Good stuff.
Good.
Good. So I think first and foremost, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening, and I guess give you an insight about my representations and objections to the planned proposal. Now, specifically, I don't have an issue with the majority of this. I think it's key to indicate and highlight my main issues around the flats, of which I believe and understand involves an element or a majority of social housing. And I think it's important to go through a few bits around my concerns of antisocial behaviour and criminality that I believe will succumb if those flats are installed in their current locations. And now I completely accept, and I'm certainly not naive to the fact that certainly when I bought a property on the estate, that there would be social housing, and I certainly have no objection. We need to look after these people, and we need to ensure that certain people that perhaps aren't as privileged as you and I certainly have a roof over their heads. However, where the flats are, where the proposal is for those 2 flats, which are located as I say, sort of southwesterly on the Spine Road, are no more than around 200 yards or so from a park and recreational area. Now, in a former life, I was a detective constable for Essex Police, and I think probably to perhaps give you an understanding about and sort of some context around my concerns, probably perhaps to give you a live sort of example and bring this to life. And hopefully you'll be able to understand why I have objections to where those flats are located. First and foremost, I think as I say, the flats located in proximity near to a park and recreational area causes me real concern, especially, as I say, around criminality and antisocial behaviour. When I was a Detective Constable for Essex Police, which I predominantly looked after the Basildon District, Castle Point and Rochford Rayleigh area, dealing with serious and high-level crime, we had a big issue in Castle Point around a place called John Burroughs Park. And in John Burroughs Park, you have a block of flats called Sulby House. And Sulby House housed people from the local area. It was social housing. And unfortunately, with social housing becomes vulnerable people, people that, as I say, are not as privileged as you and I, people that are exposed to perhaps backgrounds of criminality, people that are exposed to low income or no income at all. And unfortunately, that vulnerability can at times lead to addictions. Now, not for one moment am I saying that those flats will be full of individuals that will be recreational or drug addicts, but it certainly exposes it to a risk. And it's all about, to me, it's about risk mitigation, and that, I think that's quite key tonight. It's not about you know, having social housing on the build estates. It's a risk acceptance that we have to accept in this day and age. But to me, it's about mitigating those risks. And I think, you know, a study by Nottingham and Trent University, which was undertaken in recent years, proved and shown that social housing on new build estates increased crime levels in the area. You can't get away from that, and that's a matter of fact. But we have to accept that, but we have to mitigate that. Now, what happened with Sulby House in John Burroughs Park was, being only a stone's throw from a park area and recreational area, it meant that local drug runners, county line drug runners, preyed on vulnerable individuals within those flats and used that park as a hub, as a point of contact.
1 minute left,
sir. See?
1 minute left.
Okay. They used that as a part, they used that as an area, as a hub to deal and supply drugs from. Now, you may or may not know, but Rochford and Rayleigh on a good night with a full capacity of police officers has between 4 and 6 police officers. That's without taking in holiday absences, extension of duties, scene guards, hospital guards, whatever it might be. So as far as I'm concerned, having a block of flats situated probably no more than about 200 yards from a park and a recreational area prevents real concern to me. Where phase 1 currently is, where the flats were built, they were built on the main road in a densely populated area near an industrial estate, away from recreational areas that will be used by young children and families. And I think, as I say, I accept that these areas need to be provided to social, but we need to ensure that they're placed in certain areas where we're going to at least mitigate those risks to the area. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Sorry to have to cut you off.
That's fine.
There's no visiting members want to speak on this? No, thank you, Councillor McPherson. The ward councillor is Councillor Stanley. 5 minutes, please, Councillor Stanley. Councillor Reeves.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I asked a question to the officers. Why is it that we've got policies of size of gardens, size of parking bays, and yet we're not adhering to those policies that we've got? I'd like to know the reason why we're not adhering to that, and the fact that we've got these, if you like, social housing all in one place that's opposite each other. Why have we not pepper potted them around, as we have got a policy of having to do that? Why is that not done so? The fact that it has been reported by the police service that there is criminality when we hold them all together in one place, and this could become detrimental to the council itself in controlling the area and how the residents will succumb to that sort of, if you like, difficulty. I also have problems with parking, as there is insufficient parking in the area, in these areas, because I know we're going to say 1 bedroom flat is going to have 1 parking space, but it needs 2 parking spaces, as it will be controlled by 2 people if it's a double bedroom, and not there's going to be 2 people there and they'll both have cars, so we haven't got parking space for those, for the extra. So there's these questions that need to be answered, and I feel sure that you'll find that an answer for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stanley.
Shall I take those
Can we come
questions
back,
now?
please?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
So let me just see if I can get another plan on the screen. Just zoom out a little bit. Okay, so the plan on the screen is an analysis of the garden areas for the dwellings, and the ones that are highlighted in the darker blue colour, so there's 2 here, 1, 2 nearby each other here, and 1 here, are the ones that don't quite meet the 100 square metre reference in the supplementary planning document. But the supplementary planning document goes on to say that dwellings will be expected to be provided with 100 square metres unless they are positioned adjacent to an area of well-maintained public open space. And so we've taken, these are not hugely under provision. So I think, forgive me, I haven't got the precise point at which this is referred to in the report, but I think it might be around 5 square metres that we're talking about, some of these 5 gardens being short. But because they're positioned immediately opposite a large, substantial area of which will be well-maintained public open space, we're of the view that this wouldn't conflict with your supplementary planning guidance in respect of garden areas. In terms of parking bays, the parking bays proposed do meet the preferred bay size of 2.9 by 5.5. I think your reference might be to the garages that are provided, but because these garages essentially are in addition to the 2 spaces that are provided on plot that do meet the 2.9 by 5.5, they don't need to qualify as an actual parking bay. And they still would be of a size that are usable as a garage, but they just wouldn't meet the 7 by 3 metre standard. But because they're in addition, we are of the view that the parking that's proposed would meet the council's preferred bay size standard. In terms of pepper potting the affordable, if I just go back to the site, I'll go back to this plan first and just point out to you where the affordable housing is going to be, or proposed to be. So that's in this flatted block here, in this flatted block here, and then you might be able to see that this terrace and these 2 semi-detached properties have blue dots on them, and they're also affordable properties. So whilst it's true to say that the affordable housing that's proposed is not, as separated out throughout these parcels as it could be in theory, when you look at the site, the wider site as a whole, actually this sort of cluster of affordable housing here is not adjacent to any affordable housing in this adjacent parcel, which is under construction at the moment, Blore. The nearest affordable housing, there's some, what I might do is bring up another plan. So this isn't, this isn't one of the applicant's submitted plans, but it just shows the wider context a little bit of the site. So whilst all the layout's not provided, what you've got is a proposal for an affordable flatted block here, one in the northern part of the southern parcel here, and then some houses that would be affordable homes here. But in this adjacent parcel, in this bit, you've got no affordable housing. The affordable housing in this parcel is over this side. And then you've got some in the phase 1, which is the flatted block that some of you might have seen it's constructed, is over here. So actually, in terms of the overall site, what you are getting is, you know, some separation of the affordable homes throughout. It is also the case that when particularly flatted schemes, you know, they're managed by affordable housing providers, and so you need, usually they want all of the scheme to be affordable rather than a mix of market and affordable within that same block for management purposes. So that's possibly one of the reasons why developers propose flatted blocks that are either entirely market housing or either entirely affordable housing. And I said the affordable block we've accepted in phase 1 to the north. In terms of the parking provision, I think there was reference to the, you know, 1-bed flats maybe requiring 2 spaces, but the standard does require 1 space for a 1-bed flat, and I don't think there would be grounds for us to insist on any greater proportion of parking for those properties.
Thank you very much, Katie. Would you like a supplementary question?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Chairman. I understand what you're saying, but I still consider that the 3 blocks or the 3 areas that has got affordable housing could be separated quite drastically on that plan, and I also would like to see some provision of parking, extra parking, not just adequate parking, but extra parking in the areas where there is this problem of spaces to park, as that will overload that whole corner of vehicles, and somebody may be parking or will be parking in front of other properties where they can't park. In other words, you will have quite a number of extra cars, and there isn't any extra space there to put any extra load of vehicles.
Thank you, Councillor Stanley. You're actually just supposing, we just actually don't know that's what's going to happen with the parking. Can I now go on to Councillor Eaves, please?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
A few issues, I think. I want to thank Mr Hoy, first of all, for coming and giving us the benefit of his actual experience. And I think it would be very remiss of us if we didn't actually take note of what he has actually brought to the committee. The responsibility for antisocial behaviour is not only that of the police, but also of the council. And I'm aware, as Mr Hoy has already said, that neither of us have the capacity to deal with the current issues. My concern is that we have a policy of pepper potting of social housing within the state. Now, we are, if we approve this as it is at the moment, that is quite an intensification within a single area that I believe is an issue that we should take very seriously on the, certainly with the information that Mr Hoy has brought to us tonight. One of the other things, just a small thing reading through the report, a lot of trees proposed to be through the site. It's well known that new trees, when they're planted within the first 2 years, are quite vulnerable. I'd like to see a condition put in there that trees are surveyed after 2 years, and any that have died are replaced. So I think that for myself, I look at where the social housing is, and I think I agree with Councillor Stanley that they should be split up and spread around this proposed area to prevent the kind of criminality that I believe is a genuine concern that Mr Hoy has brought to us tonight, and I think that we should take that very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eaves. Katie, could we put a condition on regarding the trees?
on that tree condition, the standard landscaping condition that we have already requires that if any of the planting, including trees, dies or is removed or for any other reason is not there, within 5 years after planting, it must be replanted on the same basis. So that's covered.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think we're discussing the...
Sorry, was there another question to come back to? Or?
Well, so I think you've actually explained why. I just want to clarify, you have actually completely clarified why it cannot be pepper potted any further than it already is. Is that correct?
Well, obviously the recommendation is for approval, so officers are content that where the affordable housing is cited is acceptable. When you take the site as a whole, the affordable housing is not all clustered in one location. I think we haven't interpreted pepper potting, in my experience, in terms of requiring it to be, spread out evenly across any site. And I think what we've looked at in this case is that the access into this affordable block here is via this point here. And the access to this affordable block is via this access point here. I think when you look at this street scene, this will be read kind of as a whole, and it includes a mix of affordable and market housing. Obviously, the flatted blocks are of a scale and form and appearance of their own. But the dwellings, yes, there's a terrace here, and the semi-detached pair that's affordable are not exactly the same form and appearance as this semi-detached pair on the corner here, but partly that's because this property on the corner's got to turn the corner and respond to this street scene as well. But they don't look vastly dissimilar, if you like. So if you were the layperson walking along, you probably wouldn't spot that, that's affordable and that's not. And I think, whilst I'm mindful of the kind of social issues that have been raised, that potentially there's a concern that relates to affordable housing, I don't think we, in terms of planning, can attribute, social disturbance, problems to just affordable homes. I think there's maybe a danger that there's some level of sort of discrimination against the occupants of these potential homes. I should maybe point out as well that there is a difference. So some of the flats would be affordable rent, yes, but this cluster here are shared ownership homes. So,
thank you very much, Councillor FD. Have you got a mic? Yes, you have. Councillor FD, you've got 5 minutes.
Hello. Right, thank you, Chairman. Two things. One, taking into account what Mr. Hoy says, I looked at the Essex Police, and I find it quite disturbing that the published documents that have been studied by the Essex Police, they can't come to an informed decision pursuant to the National Planning Policy Framework, and I'm very reluctant to grant this through on that. I'm very, very reluctant, and I'd actually move for a deferment on this so it can actually be discussed properly and actually get some sort of commitment from the police. And also about the affordable housing, I understand what Katie says about the flats, the management company wanting to control the flats as affordable, but if it's a mixture, the flats would be better, and I think we should always strive for better. So that's one point in this. So I'm moving for a deferment on this because of the Essex Police.
Could I just...
Yep. Yeah.
Could I just sort of comment on the Essex Police response? So I think the Essex Police, obviously we consult the Essex Police, and they do make reference to not being able to, or the published documents don't provide sufficient detail. I think sometimes the Essex Police want secure by design accreditation to be achieved, and that relates to to things such as the types of locks that go on doors and windows, and those aren't things that we can insist on from a planning perspective, so we wouldn't be appropriate, and we haven't imposed conditions on other developers to require that a secure by design accreditation be reached, whilst we would encourage a developer to get that accreditation. I think where we consult Essex Police is about the layout. Okay, so the layout of buildings and how the buildings relate to open spaces, so that we don't create kind of secluded areas, you know, where there might be potential for antisocial behaviour. And so, well, Essex Police have been provided with a full layout of this site, and we have looked at it. So as well as Essex Police being consulted, we do take into account and look at layouts in that regard. And so that's why I spoke in my presentation about passive surveillance and making sure that all kind of open spaces, so this amenity green space here, has all these dwellings looking onto that space. So all the windows in those dwellings are eyes onto that space. And so that encourages, hopefully, or deters maybe antisocial behaviour within that area, because there's lots of eyes on you. And the same goes for the western boundary. So what we haven't got in this layout is kind of lots of closed boarded fencing, rear garden boundaries, you know, blocking off, if you like, or facing onto the open spaces within the site. So I think officers have looked at it, and we're quite satisfied that this layout does achieve good legibility, good pedestrian routes through, and the orientation of dwellings such that there'd be lots of, you know, windows and eyes on streets, and not designing in any potential for antisocial behaviour into the layout.
Thank you very much. Councillor Foster, did you want to talk on the deferment?
Thank you, Chairman. Could you put that last picture back up, please?
Oh, yeah, it's gone. I don't know. There we go. That one.
Just a question. Assuming there is a need for that amount of flatted building, let's say the one in the middle section was moved up to the north, to the northern section. Is there any evidence that that would make any difference to antisocial behaviour?
Well, all I would comment is that I think that there was... I didn't point out to you, but this space here is not within the application site, but this is where the playground is. Okay, so this is the main playground area, the open space playground that was referred to, I think. But there's also this big area of open space here, and then there's these little pocket as well at green space. If you, hypothetically moved this flatted block up here, that would be closer to the playground. I mean, we as officers don't have any issue in terms of planning, in terms of the location of these affordable houses and the flatted blocks in proximity to the play area. Actually, in some regards, children living in the flats, will benefit from being kind of in close proximity to a playground.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I absolutely don't support the motion for deferral. I do believe
Microphone, please.
sufficient information in the report to come up with a decision. In terms of the Essex Police, the comments this evening have been around layout. Absolutely there is enough information presented there to determine layout. There might not, as the officers have explained to us, be not enough information to do with the construction of the door locks and other things like that. But in terms of layout, there is absolutely enough information for the police to have made a decision. And their decision would be about the whole site. It wouldn't be stigmatising, as it appears to be happening this evening, the social housing. I don't support the move for deferral, and I'm quite happy that I have more than sufficient information to make an informed decision on planning matters. Thank you.
Thank you, members. We have a motion on the table and it's been seconded for a deferment. Can I have a show of hands for deferment, please, in favour of deferment? And please keep that as well. Sonia counts them. Thank you. Members against deferment, please have a show of hands. Members, there's 4 for deferment and 8 against deferment. So that is lost members. We'll go back to the original motion. The recommendation is set out on paragraph 1.1 of the report on pages 6.1 to 6.5. Again, voting will be done by a show of hands. All in favour of... Oh, I got a seconder, please. Councillor Smith, thank you. Members, can I have a show of hands in favour of this recommendation? Thank you. Members against, please.
Could I have my vote recorded, please?
And Councillor Stanley would like it recorded. Of course. Thank you. So that's 4 against, and Councillor Stanley's vote has been recorded. Thank you, members. That motion has been carried. Members, going on to item 7. Get with it. This is the 7 Arterial Park, Chelmsford Road, Rayleigh. Mr. Stranks will represent the officer's report. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Chairman. If we just await the first plan, there's only 2 of the set that I'm going to show you. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Move it up a little bit. Chairman, we're looking at the middle unit here of this new estate that some members might have seen on the way. Yeah, okay. I was trying not to resonate, but okay. We're looking at this middle unit here. Members remember when we looked at the outline permission, it was a hybrid giving you details of the first phase, which has been at advanced, if not finished, stage of construction and occupied, leaving the balance of the remainder of the site to be developed. We've got a simple, small application really for some extract flues. The middle unit is occupied by a company, I think they're a national chain, who do accident repairs. And if we could jump to the elevations, please. We'll see they've got 3 flues on the back of the building. The elevation is split there. That's the front. It was a combined application with some signage, which has been dealt with separately. But we've got the application for these 3 flues. These serve a spray booth that's inside the building. And you'll see that there's 3 different sizes. There's this larger one, which is 900mm in diameter. It extends about 1.5 metres above the roof line. They're saying in the particulars it won't be visible above the shape, but they've given us the nearest sections of the roof, because obviously to create draft on this one you need it to be a certain height above. Then there's a smaller diameter one that just appears marginally above the edge of the roof it's nearest to by 0.26, less than 1 foot above there. And then the last one is a round grille, like we often see on housing, where there's just a vent in the wall, and that again is about 900mm in diameter. So those 3 different extract flues, they contain the filters and things that are used in the process. They are quite typical in design. They're made of anodised steel. They're typical to industrial areas. There's no real harm to the architecture of the group of buildings. And given that, Chairman, the recommendation to you is to approve, subject to the conditions set out in the report.
Thank you. We've got no public speakers. Councillor Thurston, would you like to speak on this? She's gone. Obviously not. That's a no then. We haven't got any ward member here to speak on it. Have we anyone wishing to speak on it? Oh, we've got quite a few. Councillor FD.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. I'm in support of this. I just got a question. This is the site with the proposed traveller site on it. Would there be any problems with the flues, with the distance? Would that have any effect? I know it says neighbours and stuff, but they're not there yet, and they'd be in the open. I know it's quite a distance, but just out of interest.
Right.
Thank you, Chairman. The traveller site, as you say, is allocated here. The unit itself is over here, and there'll be other development in this intervening part. But our colleagues in environmental health, we was able to get a reply from them today, and they're very happy with the apparatus used. I think there's a figure here that they've said it'll catch 99% of the discharge. There's 3 filters, which is possibly why we've got 3 different techniques of exhaust. One that takes out paint particles, one that takes out certain solvents, one that takes out other substances. and the paints, I think, are water-based, which they say are better for the environment as well. One other thing the EHO examined in the particulars submitted was that normally, I think under law, they have to be replaced every, I think, 14 months. These guys want to, they say, they want to do it every 6 months. So their attitude to the management of the discharge seems to be a lot more positive than they need to be. So our environmental health officer has no problem in advising that, from what he can see from the application submitted and what they've said, that this should be the minimal of impact if members are concerned about that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Foster.
That's answered my question, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Stanley.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just one point. When you turn around and say 99% of it will be collated or collected in the fine detail of how it works, do we know what that 1% is that's going to be extracted into the air? And is it in, as it is in, if it's in the right wind change to where people are, do we know what effect that might have on those people?
Chairman, the reading from what you said, this setup is rated to remove 99% of paint particles. So I think his message in simple terms is that this is good kit, as it were, to do the job. I can't help you with the science, the actual concentrations, etc. But if something is 99% good at doing the job, I think he would have expected in his experience that as an authority, we often perhaps see less and less is acceptable. This is way above what we normally find. So he was quite confident, dare I say excited, about the fact that these people seem to be putting in good kit to do the job. He had no qualms with recommending to me to recommend to you that this is okay. But I can't help you with the sort of sample sciences of you know, the particulates.
So we don't actually know what that 1% is over a long term. That's what we're saying, is it?
He says it's rated to remove 99% of paint particles. That's what he said.
Councillor Stanley, if our environmental health person, the expert, has said it's okay, I think we've got to accept it. We're never ever, I would, Frank might correct me, we're never going to get 100%.
I'd just like to say that it was considered okay for children coming out of school.
No, we're not talking,
for those people.
Councillor Stanley, we're not talking
1% killed one person.
Stanley, we're not talking about coming out.
I'm just asking what that 1% is.
We're not talking about councillor coming out of school. We're coming out of an industrial state.
Yes, that's just the point. It's coming out of an industrial site, not out of cars.
Not with children walking past school. We've had a report to say that's the top rate we can get. I don't think we can get any further on this. I really don't, unless someone can actually say that I'm wrong.
Well, I think we can, because filters are made.
Councillor Stanley, can you then please provide evidence where you can get something 100%?
Yes.
Where is it? In policy.
I can't bring it to you at this moment in time, right. But I can give you absolute.
Stop, Councillor Stanley. If you come to a committee meeting with facts, we need them in writing so everyone can have evidence of them. If you can't evidence them tonight, we cannot consider them, I'm afraid. If you had read the report, you'd seen that you had an issue, our officers would have answered these and come back to you, which you clearly didn't go back. So I'm going to move on. Is anyone else want to speak? I'm going to go through to the recommendation. Oh, sorry, Roger, I didn't see you. Sorry, Councillor Constable, I didn't see you.
You talk about their flues coming out. My understanding of the flue would be from gases and stuff like that. So are they flues or are they extract ducts? Just clarify the terminology, please.
Chairman, I think the terminology they've used in the application is a flue, but I think I used in my reply there exhaust. My understanding is that the spray booths that would be inside the building, whether because of pressure and, you know, if you're spraying, you get all the paint in the air and everything else, it needs to be extracted. But on the way to being extracted and sucked out, they have all these filters in the different systems. In my experience, I've never seen a system with 3 before, but then I'm not always looking for it. So, and just deal with the application that we're given. But we've consulted as part of our work the council's environmental health officers, and they from time to time do a lot of this. I mean, with things like takeaways, they often say that there's nothing wrong with the kit, it's the maintenance regime. They don't change the filters enough, and that's why you get the smells from cooking and things like this. But when the guys, we asked for a view for you tonight on this, when he see that their attitude is to rechange the filters more quickly than is required by environmental health law.
Yeah, that wasn't the question I was asking you. It was just on the terminology of the extract duct, whether it's a duct or whether it's a flue, because my understanding of a flue would be from, say, a gas appliance or
this is for paint spraying, where they use pressurised air. Now, they've used the term flue. Whether that's the correct term, I couldn't answer you. But what they contain, as they suck out the particulars, they contain filters that clean up, if you like, the discharge. And our own officers who specialise in this, they say they're approached by the applicants and the kit that they're using is very good.
Thank you very much. Any other member? No? Oh, sorry, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm quite happy to take the expert, professional and experienced opinions from our environmental health officers and move this for approval.
Have you a seconder? Councillor Foster seconds. Thank you. The recommendation is set out at paragraph 1.1 on the report of 7.1 to 7.2. Members, can I have a show of hands in favour of this application, please? Against? Abstain? Thank you. So that's 7-4, no, 11-4, and 1 abstention. None against. Thank you, members. That's carried. Members, we're now on to 8.1, which have you all got? Yep. Just make sure you've all got the copy. Yeah. And this is land fronting to 9 The Chase, Fellness Island, and again it'll be Mike Stranks to do the report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is to a site to the northeast of Fellness Island. It's one of a small grouping of dwellings that you see scattered about in these areas. We're looking at this area here. The Chase forms, you'll see, 3 terraces of 3 dwellings which front onto this part. There's the Chase running through the sort of broadly east-west direction, but you'll see that there's a crescent with access both ends that serves this small group of dwellings. If we could look, there's a verge there. If we can jump to the photographs, please, 2-plan photographs. Here we see the western end. There's the Chase. There's a ditch here, which we'll talk about in a moment. And there's an access point at the beginning of the terrace. If we scroll down on this set, we then look in the opposite direction, and that's the western end where the crescent exits or enters, depending which direction you're coming from. And while we're here, I'd like you to just ponder on the condition of the ditch, but also this verge area here that you see is rutted, where perhaps in wet weather vehicles have had to overtake or park. I think the first photograph we saw, we actually saw some vehicles parked there. If we can jump to the next one, please, just go through these photos of how it is. Here we see a little bit of parking that's provided for residents on just sort of tarmacked area. But as you go through these, if members can note that all these front curtilages just got pedestrian gates, there doesn't seem to be any garaging or drive-ins to the side of these properties. If we could continue, please, Katie. It's more of the same, just inching along, if we keep going. And we get to the end. This is towards the end of the crescent. I think, is there one more of the end shot? No, that's all right, that's fine. Oh, yes, we have, there. So we've gone back to where we started, and you'll see there's front boundary fences. The parking that's available is in where you can just see the car in the corner of the picture there. If we could go to the site layout plan 3, please. What's before you tonight, Chairman, is a proposal to construct 19 car parking spaces. We've just looked at this verge area here, and you'll see that some are in like a herringbone pattern in front of the dwellings, and you'll see a larger group directly accessing off the Chase itself. The 4 blue ones are the electric vehicle charging, and you'll see there's 2 disabled spaces marked in yellow as well. They're laid out to your preferred standard. And what the applicants say is that there's a need, we saw the evidence of the vehicle rutting on the verge, but there's a need to make provision for car parking. There's operational issues from time to time where vehicles or agricultural vehicles need to pass up and down the road, and they may be obstructed by parking. But there's also, the applicants say, people living in the houses and on the island, as they get older, it's not that they necessarily need parking for themselves, but they get carers, visitors, delivery drivers, things like this. There's a need to accommodate that without causing congestion. So there's operational reasons, and there's the other reason just to make the provision clear of the street so they don't get damage to the verges and the landscaped areas that we have. This application came in initially in 2021. And the case offer was able to negotiate it down, if you call it that way. It was 25 spaces, and because there's 9 dwellings, the 2 car parking spaces for each dwelling that would be required would require 18 spaces, and to have perfect compliance, given the remoteness of this site, you would want 21 spaces, but they're settling on 19, so they're actually, if you like, 2 visitor spaces short. Now, because access to this site is controlled, I myself was denied access this morning to go and check 1 or 2 things out. Officers feel we can live with the shortfall in visitor parking spaces because it's managed, very much managed. So visiting is planned and booked by appointment, and in that circumstance, the improvement to car parking here, officers feel could be accepted. There is a concern about flood risk that's been cropped up here. The applicants are saying there's no outfall to this ditch area, and the Environment Agency, you'll see in the history of the report, have been consulted backwards and forwards and now raise no objection agreeing the applicant's findings. One of the reasons I wanted to get on there this morning was because to dig around or double check down here if there's a buried pipe, which I suspect is the concerns. The locals probably know when these roads were put in and know if there was a pipe put in. If we can look at the next set of FLAC photographs, please, Katie. There's a photograph on, you see those 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 photographs here. If we can scroll down, I think it's a scroll. There we go. This area here is one of the culverts. Now, I can't make out if that's a concrete lip to a pipe, which it may be. I could only have a better look if I was there. Or whether that's actually grass mowings from the work that's been done that have just fell down and rested on some kind of large leaf or grass. But the applicants who I've spoke to today say they've known the site for 9 years. They don't recall there being any pipe there. They haven't seen any. And if there is a pipe, they say that it's well buried. It wouldn't be that feature that I'm pointing out to you now. So in the dialogue that I've had today and the emails with the applicants, whilst they're comfortable with the submission they've put before you, if members were still concerned that this ditch would have a flooding function in the event of breach of seawall and dispersal of water, or they're not prepared to accept the natural drainage as rainwater's seeping away, the applicants would accept a condition that we could explore this. We could have a survey to explore whether a pipe exists, and then if a pipe does exist, a step then that they would have to pipe this run before filling it over and installing the car park. As it stands, officers are recommending to you as per the recommendation, but given the concerns raised by local people, and I think members may be concerned about as well, I think the applicants are meeting us halfway to say, well, look, we can have a better look, and if we find that there's a pipe there, then they would be agreeable to piping it. So the recommendation at the moment, Chairman, is just as set out in the report.
Thank you very much. We have 1 visiting member, and that's Councillor McPherson. You'll have 5 minutes, and we'll give you a nod when it's a minute, Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman. Can everybody hear me okay?
We can.
Wonderful, thank you. First of all, as the officer mentioned, the original application, as per the document dated on our RDC website, document date 4th of March 21, was for 26 parking spaces. Yet this is not mentioned under relevant planning history. Is that relevant to members in making a decision tonight? I don't know. I asked members if they have taken time to read the consultation responses. Every single house, that's every single house, so not one or two perhaps seen as NIMBYs, but every single house that is affected by this application have expressed that they do not wish for the number of parking spaces. There has never been an issue with parking, and as the photos show, it will remove a community amenity and an open space, which includes a mature ash tree. One wonders why we consult when the residents' views are not even considered. Would you like a green open space that you have enjoyed for many years as you walk out of your house turned into concrete? So loss of amenity space, open space, their view and impact on the environment are for consideration. Now consider the tragedy of the floods of 1953 and our responsibility to protect our residents. The officer has already mentioned that there could be a concrete lip and that the applicant has only known that area for around 9 years. Now, the National Planning Framework clearly steers against any development in flood zone areas. Our own core strategy, policy ENV3, supports against development in flood zones too. Foulness Island is in flood zone 3, the highest level. Foulness may be a small community. I suspect many members may never have visited the island. But this small community's concerns are as important as any other part of our district. A reduction in the number of parking spaces with retaining more of their open space would be a more reasonable option for consideration. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Person. Councillor FD is the ward councillor as well as the Councillor Person. So it's over to you, Councillor FD. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I called this in for a couple of reasons. One is the flooding. I was there in 2013, I think it was, and it was within 2 centimetres of the whole island being overtopped. So flooding is a very real issue on that island, it really is. I'm a little bit concerned about where it says they're going to take it to hard standing. There's a ditch there for a reason, even if it's just water coming off the road, which I probably think it is, because I've been on there, it's so flat. The roads do flood quite a lot, and you get overshooting of the water, so it's probably built there for one time to stop the water going into the houses or the front gardens. So where it says hard stand, I'd like to see a permeable flooring for the car park, not an impermeable one, so it does have a chance to actually drain away. Again, this street scene, you ever been on Foulness Island? It is green spaces, there's not car parks everywhere, there just isn't. This would be so out of character for Foulness. A reduction on, I can't believe I'm saying this because I'm always fighting for more car parking spaces, but a reduction on spaces in this area I think would be well for the street scene. And that's about it.
Right, thank you. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chairman. It just seemed to me from the description there are a number of open questions about potential pipe connections and stuff like that, and I would propose we defer it till we've got some more definitive information, actually.
Thank you. Have you a seconder? Councillor Reeves. Anyone else? Yes?
I would suggest to members, if we are going to consider deferment, then clearly the status of the pipe is the principal reason put forward, but we might as well ensure that we are in a position to determine the application when it does come back to us, providing the information is known, and ask for
Thank you, Councillor Smith. You've just said what I was going to say, that perhaps the applicant could look at permeable surface instead of concrete, because then that will let the water go, and maybe reducing the number of parking spaces. Councillor Eaves.
Thank you, Chair. I'd also like you to be part of the deferment, the reasoning behind why the MOD have actually proposed this when the people who are actually going to benefit by it don't want it.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Stanley, you're talking on the deferment, Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman. As we all know, that ditches are better at holding water than pipes. Pipes get blocked up. So with this in mind, and of all the ditches that we have and that we put water into, and that's the Environment Agency put the water into it from the roads, the wider the ditch or the deeper the ditch, the better the holding of water rather than a pipe. As we already know, they can fail. And I can't support this application.
Well, we're not supporting, you're not talking
sorry.
about, you must have might have missed that, Councillor Stanley. We're actually talking about deferment, not approval. So I will, right, Councillor FD. Which way are you going with your mics?
Thank you, Chairman. Is there any way we can put on the deferment revisiting the street scene? Because it's just so incongruous to the rest of the island.
I'll let the officers come back to you on that, Councillor FD, because I obviously can't answer that.
Sorry, Chairman, I didn't get that point.
Like
There's so much vibration on the sound. Could I have it restated?
The street scene, because it's so incongruous to the rest of the island.
So, if I may come in, what would you be looking for officers to achieve? I've got it that you've said reduction in car parking spaces gives you back more green.
More greenery there, so if the surface is going to be impermeable, maybe the
colour.
Grasscrete instead of concrete, so it'd be...
Yeah, permanent,
yeah. So it'd look more green.
Right, members. Oh, sorry. Yep. We could have a mic. Councillor.
Yeah, could we also include in the deferment a consultation, official consultation with the residents rather than hearsay?
I think we've done that.
Chairman, we've done it twice,
Have we?
and this is why the application has taken so long. There's been some issue about it being a second application. I was actually talking with Councillor FD and Councillor McPherson on the way in. Our records don't show an earlier application. There was a batch of these that came in last year, some of which have been determined. And this one started, I think the member said earlier, at 26 spaces. I say in the report, I think 25. What the case officer did in response to the objections we had then was see if she could, like members are saying tonight, get it down so that there was more room to landscape. Yeah. So we consulted on the first application, got those in. As a result of those, she got the revisions in, reconsulted residents again on the revised application. So your report sets out 2 sets of consultations, a lot of which has come back with the same issues, because although taking the point that the more green you can get, the better for the residents. Residents have got issues with the scheme as a whole, which don't change whether it's 19, 15 or 25 spaces, yeah? So we have consulted twice. As a matter of planning practice, if the applicants substantially change the scheme, let's just pretend they came back with 10, then we'd probably take a view that because that's such a difference from 19, we would again have to reconsult the neighbours. But if they take just 1 or 2 spaces, then we'd probably say, well, is that serious enough to warrant a reconsultation with the public? We know what they say. So it depends what the applicant's answer is to your questions. But if they're significant enough, we will reconsult anyway as a matter of course.
Can I come in there, Mike? If we've got the, on these pages where they've said, residents have said, well, they don't like them, or why are we having them? If they, the applicant come back and said, this is hypothetical figures, I appreciate this, and they say, right, we will reduce them to 10, why do we need to go out again for consultation when we've got it representation from the residents saying, well, we don't...
Well, You have, in making the decision and following the process, you have to be very careful that you don't end up determining something that the public haven't had input in. So some changes are minor.
Yeah.
You get developers come along and they want to reduce the window by 900 mil or something, and you say, well, it's not worth reconsulting on. But if they want to deepen the extension, then clearly, if it's significant enough, block out light, that sort of thing, you should reconsult. Same as if there's an issue around numbers and greenery, it just might be that if they did really beat the numbers down, that some residents might say, okay, I remove my objection, or I no longer hold an objection, and then for the purposes of the decision you make on the night, you've got a better feel for how people think about it. So some people will hold an objection in principle all the way through, that's fine. Others might share your view that if it was a smaller scheme, they'd find it acceptable. You won't know until you ask them. But if they just took one space off, I'm not sure it's worth consulting over a small change like that. We have to wait and see, I think, what the applicant does. But as officers, we tend to be cautious with bureaucrats. So, you know, if there's a change that could possibly lead to judicial reviews and all sorts of like that, it's far better to tread cautiously and reconsult. So if we don't end up reconsulting, it's probably pretty clear that it's such a minor change. Just bring it back to you as the applicant says, well, that's my best shot, what they're going to do.
Thank you for the clarification. Members, we have a motion put forward to us and seconded for deferment. Can I have a show of hands for members in favour of deferment, please? Members, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Officers, you are clear of what the deferments are. Thank you. I should have asked before. Thank you, members. I'd like to say this is Councillor Merrick's last meeting with us. So thank you very much for all the time, what you've done with us. So I wish you good luck in the future with whatever you do, and hope to see you at anything we do. So thank you very much.